How is it that a virus that originated from China somehow came to be blamed on the black bodies by the same Chinese authorities? In less than 100 days since the first case of coronavirus was reported in Wuhan, authorities in China are saying coronavirus is from Nigeria. As many of our hard-fought freedoms are denied to us today in combat the spread of the coronavirus, let us all remember that most basic human right is the right to life. To protect this right, let us all remain in our homes and observe the guidelines given to us by our respective governments across the world. Fellow fighters, already in the 1950s, Frantz Fanon wrote about Africa as the wretched of the earth. He located racism directly at the people of African descent to be the greatest and most violent of all oppressions. All people of the world despise Africans. Nothing about Africans invites respect, dignity, humanness, and beauty in the eyes of the world. We represent slavery, underdevelopment, poverty, disease, hunger, suffering, and illiteracy. Everyone thinks they are better than an African. They can meet the worst form of suffering like Holocaust and gulags. They still will see themselves as better than Africans. Meaning, instead of human tragedy making them identify with Africans, they will still think of their own human suffering as better than being an African. Why? Because African is being trapped in a skin color, a body we can never escape. How do you escape being yourself? Such will only lead to self-destruction and permanent self-sabotage. These are our conditions and image in the world. Therefore, a genuine conversation about Freedom Day must reflect on this status of African people. The fact that these conditions have continued long after African continent have declared itself independent and free of colonial rule is a problem. The African body has not attained humanity and dignity in the eyes of itself, even in the eyes of those who inhabit it. It feels like a curse we want to escape, a burden we want to dump. With the global outbreak of coronavirus in Wuhan, China, the black body still found its way to bearing the blame for a virus that never came from its continent. In Guangzhou province, the home to Asia's largest African migrant population, a state-sponsored propaganda has come to blame African migrants for bringing and spreading COVID-19. The local authorities have identified Africa as the source of the largest number of imported COVID-19 cases. Among all foreign cases identified in Guangzhou, 76% are said to be from African countries, including 36% from Nigeria alone. How is it that a virus that originated from China somehow came to be blamed on the black bodies by the same Chinese authorities? In less than 100 days since the first case of coronavirus was reported in Wuhan, authorities in China are saying coronavirus is from Nigeria. The black body is so despised that it must be blamed for any disease anywhere in the world. As a result of this state propaganda, African migrants are being targeted in China, beaten up randomly on the street, not allowed into shopping malls, and evicted from buildings they rent. This tragic development during a time that requires global solidarity already shows you what the world is willing to do in order to put Africa in its rightful place. At the bottom, as an evil continent infecting the whole world with death and diseases. We must not forget that just before the global outbreak of COVID-19, the world was discussing the migrant crisis in Europe, mainly from African continent. Europe, in particular, countries like Italy, France, Spain, Britain, and Germany were closing their borders against one of the largest migrant crises in centuries. The destabilization of Libya saw hundreds of thousands of African people seek asylum in Europe. This very conflict resulted in renewed slavery of African people forced into chains and free labor in the 21st century. Euro-American politics of borders and keeping the foreigners away were at the center of a new rising global order. Many people called it the return of fascism. They destabilized countries in the Middle East and Africa through brutal wars, and yet set out to build high walls to keep migrants of the very stranded countries away. It is therefore not shocking that China itself, when pressed under the crisis of pandemic which originate in their own country, could turn on the most vulnerable African migrants, blame them, and seek to cleanse their communities of black bodies. In Guangzhou, coronavirus is associated with black bodies. The reality is that this is also how Africa treats itself. Colonization, as Fanon explained, created the condition in which we look at ourselves through the eyes of the colonizers. When we see ourselves, when we see each other, we see the indignity and animality that the colonizer sees when they look at us. This is why the leadership of independent African countries has failed to break the chains that imprison the African mind. In the hands of their own leaders, Africans receive the same animal that they get from China, Europe, and North America. When Africans criticize their leadership for corruption, nepotism, and dictatorship, the African leadership subjects them to the same brutal massacres, imprisonments, and brutality that manifested in other countries. The African migrants receive the same treatment we see in China, right here in South Africa.